Bruchim Abayim. May all those gathered here be blessed. My name is Rabbi Aníbal Mas, and on behalf of myself and the entire community of Congregation Shaarey Zedek, I would like to welcome the Honorable Wab Kinew, Premier of Manitoba, the Honorable Mike Moroz, Minister of Innovation and New Technology, Ben Carr, NP for Winnipeg South Centre, Carla Compton, MLA for Tuxedo, J.D. Devgan, MLA for McPhillips, members of the clergy, honored guests, friends. Welcome to the 17th Annual Yom Hashoah Interfaith Commemoration. Tonight, as we gather in solemn remembrance of the 6 million who perished in the Shoah, we also reaffirm our shared commitment to memory, to justice, to humanity. This evening, as in past years, we will read Megillat Hashoah, the Holocaust scroll, a powerful liturgical text that gives sacred voice to the anguish, resilience, and memory of the Jewish people. But for me and for my family, this particular scroll that I have here holds deep personal significance. My father-in-law, Ron Myers, of blessed memory, was a man deeply devoted to preserving the memory of the Shoah and honoring those who perished. When he passed away in January 2010, my mother-in-law, Tzivi Myers, proposed a meaningful way to carry his legacy forward. In his honor, she commissioned the writing of this very scroll by Irma Penn of blessed memory, one of the world's first female Torah scribes. Since its completion and dedication in 2011, this sacred scroll has been read every year here at our congregation, surrounded by our community and honored guests, in a spirit of remembrance and hope. This year's commemoration feels especially emotional for my wife Ashira and for myself. The young man who sounded the shofar after our beloved Shames Emeritus, Bill Weissman, was our 11-year-old son, Ronen Mas. Ronen is not only Ron Myers' grandson, but he also proudly carries Ron's name. Tonight, he carried something even more profound, the sacred responsibility of remembrance, ledor vador, from generation to generation. Memory, tradition, and hope passed from grandfather to grandson, from the past to the present and into the future. So thank you all for being here tonight to witness, remember, and honor. And it's now my privilege to invite our Master of Ceremonies for the evening to the podium, Bel Jarniewski, Executive Director of the Jewish Heritage Center of Western Canada. Bel will begin with the land acknowledgement and will introduce the Megillat Hashoah readers. What is Bel? Bel, listen.
Welcome. I would like to begin by acknowledging that Congregation Shaarey Zedek Synagogue is located on ancestral lands on Treaty 1 territory, the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the national homeland of the Red River Métis. We respect the spirit and the intent of treaties and treaty making and remain committed to working in partnership with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples in the spirit of truth, reconciliation, and collaboration. We also affirm that our commitment to never forget must also include confronting attempts to destroy Indigenous culture and nationhood and condemning attempts to deny that historical reality. On behalf of Congregation Shaarey Zedek Synagogue and the Jewish Heritage Center, Western Canada, I'm so pleased to welcome you to the 17th Annual Interfaith reading of Megillat Hashoah, the Holocaust Scroll. We are honored tonight with the attendance of survivors, members of the second and third generation, and so many friends from the interfaith community, many of whom will be participating in tonight's program. Since 1953, the date of the 27th of Nisan, corresponding to the date of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising on the Hebrew calendar, has been marked as Yom Hashoah, a day for observing with solemn ceremony the most terrible tragedy to befall our people. With the creation of the scroll of Megillat Hashoah, we are able to observe Yom Hashoah with a meaningful and unifying ritual. Historically, Jewish tragedies have been marked in three ways: by public fast days, by designated periods of mourning on the Jewish calendar, and by the composition of Megillot, scrolls. For instance, on Tisha B'Av, the 9th of the month of Av, we read Megillat Eicha, the Scroll of Lamentations, an intricate set of dirges and descriptions of Jerusalem under siege and of the destruction of the first temple. The only specific religious content we have in the secular ceremonies marking Yom HaShoah is the special El Malei Rachamim memorial prayer for the 6 million. There has even been a suggestion from some to observe a medieval Kabbalistic custom of Tzom Shtika, literally a silent fast day, in which to reflect on the tragedy and the many questions it engenders, questions to which we do not have answers. It was out of those concerns in the late 1990s that Toronto's survivor and philanthropist Alex Eisen of blessed memory approached Rabbi David Golinkin of the Jerusalem-based Schechter Institute with the idea of creating a scroll that would be read annually around the world. The funds for the project were raised in Toronto. An academic committee was set up in Israel, including scholars from various fields, from Midrash and liturgy to Shoah studies, Bible, Talmud, and Halakha. Dr. Avigdor Shinan, an expert in Midrash and Hebrew liturgy, wrote the first draft in 6 hours, and after several rewrites, the committee approved the final version. The first reading of Megillat HaShoah took place in Toronto in 2003. The chapters that you will hear in Hebrew tonight are chanted to the same beautiful and mournful trope that is used for Lamentations. And like Lamentations, the text of Megillat HaShoah cries out with a narrative of destruction and suffering. The 6-chapter scroll is built largely around first-person testimonies. After an opening chapter that gives a searing overview of the victim's suffering, it offers composite sketches of a Christian journalist observing life in the Warsaw Ghetto, a Jewish woman in a work camp, and a Jewish youth who is forced to pull out the teeth from his brother's corpse and shove other dead bodies into the ovens. A 5th chapter consists of a eulogy for those who died in the Holocaust, and the final chapter recounts the efforts to rebuild Jewish life after the war ended. Organizers of the Megillah say that in addition to providing a set ritual, the new document is meant to address theological questions posed by the Holocaust, but often ignored in secular ceremonies. The overriding theological message of the Megillah is that humans have a right to question the divine, but we cannot expect answers, and that, even without answers, our faith in God endures. Our interfaith reading of the scroll here at Shaarey Zedek highlights the fact that the Shoah was not only an unprecedented tragedy for the Jewish people, but that we must remember it as an utter failure of civil society and of humanity writ large. 80 years have passed since the end of World War II, and the very memory of the Holocaust is under siege through denial, distortion, and conspiracy theories, but also a frightening lack of knowledge among young people. And to that end, we are so grateful to the provincial government for its efforts in strengthening Holocaust education in Manitoba. Today, as we witness a staggering rise in anti-Semitism and hate-fueled violence against us, it often seems as if the world has learned nothing and has seemingly forgotten that by 1945, the voices of 2 out of every 3 European Jews had been silenced forever, including my family on both my mother's side and my father's side. That 6 million men, women, and children were murdered simply because they were Jews. And of course, as we gather tonight, we cannot help but also reflect on how the horrific events of October 7th, 2023 have changed our world. Our hearts remain heavy as we think about all of those who fell on and since October 7th, 2023, and of all the hostages still in Gaza, the fallen and injured members of the IDF, and the families who have been shattered by the loss of their loved ones. However, sharing this evening with our friends from many faiths gives us hope. Hope that through our common efforts, we can imagine a better world for generations to come. At this time, we will begin lighting candles. And so to light the first candle in memory of the 6 million, I'd like to call on Beverly Schwartz and Francie Winograd. To light the second candle in memory of the destroyed communities, Reva Craven and Rose Azaman, both members of the second generation. To light the third candle in memory of the 1.5 million murdered children, Kaylee Saposnik. A member of the third generation. To light the fourth candle in memory of the ghetto fighters and partisans, Dr. Sharon Gozer-Tritt, a member of the second generation. And to light the fifth candle in honor of the righteous among the nations, Carolyn Sliegers-Boyd, who is the granddaughter of Righteous Among the Nations, who will be honored here on Sunday. And to light the sixth candle in honor of the State of Israel, Jessica Kogan. And we arrive at the seventh candle in memory of the millions of other victims of the Nazis and their collaborators who were murdered for racial and ideological reasons. Among them were the Roma and Sinti, who were targeted for genocide, the disabled, Jehovah's Witnesses, gay men, political prisoners, Poles, and other Slavs, dissenting clergy, Black and multiracial people, and Soviet prisoners of war. And the candle was lit by Rachamim Code. And now I'd like to introduce our first musical piece, a Schindler's List melody, which is a composition by John Williams and Naomi Shemer Sapir. And our choir, our Ruach choir, and Cantor Leslie Emery will be performing. We will now proceed to reading Megillat HaShoah, and the first chapter in English can be found on verses 1 to 7, and it is my honor to invite the Honorable Wab Kinew, Premier of Manitoba, to come to the bima. Premier Wab Kinew is the 25th Premier of Manitoba. He was first elected as the MLA for Fort Rouge in 2016 and was elected party leader and leader of the official opposition in 2017. He is from Onegaming First Nation in northwestern Ontario, and before becoming an MLA, he worked as a broadcaster and as an administrator at the University of Winnipeg, where we met. He holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in economics from the University of Manitoba and a master's degree in Indigenous governance. Premier Kinew is an honorary witness of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and a best-selling author. He's a caring dad to 3 boys and a devoted husband to his wife, Lisa, who is a doctor.
In the beginning, so spoke the chronicler. Long is the history of the eternal people, extending for millennia, including good years and bad years, tranquil years and dreadful years. In its own land and in diaspora lands, among the nations and as a free people, it enjoyed long periods of repose, during which it contributed of its endowments to follow mortals, bestowing upon them the Sabbath and faith in one God, the book of books, and the teachings of the prophets. At times, however, in darkened and difficult days, it struggled under the burdens imposed by vanquishers and subjugators. It was afflicted, body and soul, by religious wars and persecutions, burnings at the stake, and being crowded into ghettos, blood libels and pogroms, expulsions and exiles, degradation and derision. The people had neither serenity nor tranquility, and the monster of Jew hatred again and again threatened to swallow it whole, rose up against it in every generation, attempting to destroy it. Nevertheless, the people gritted its teeth, accepted the heavenly judgment, and groaning, even at times, stretched its neck on the sacrificial altar. Homeless and hunted, it sought a safe haven, a refuge for resting a while until the time of wrath had passed.
The next chapter will be chanted in Hebrew by Cantor Leslie Emery, and it can be found on page 30, verses 8 to 19.
לעם ישראל באירופה נצית אין לו שם ומה שעתה לבניו ולבנותיו אי אפשר לפרשו אין ספור בני אדם הוגלו מבתיהם נקראו ממשפחותיהם הושפלו עד עפר ושובדו עד מוות 6 מיליון ברואים בצלם נחנקו נשרפו או נורו נקברו חיים או מתו בעצמה ובקור. הפעם פערה המפלצת את פיה לבלי חוק, בצבחה מקפיא דם, וביקשה לקרות את הכל. ולא רחם יצא להשמיד, להרוג ולאבד את העם כולו, מן הבאים בימים ועד לעוברים שבאימותיהם. רכבות אין ספור טהרו דחוסות אל המחנות, ועשן הארובות התעמר לאלוהים. אך השמיים היו נחושת והרקיע ברזל, שקשוק גלגלי הקרונות התערב בנביחות הכלבים, בין טריקת דלתות הברזל הצטרף רעש הנעליים המסומרות, כתזמורת ענק דורסנית החרישו כל אלה את כל הדממה הדקה אשר בקע מליבות מתי המעט. חסידי אומות העולם אשר נגע בהם דבר האלוהים, זכרה להם אלוהים זאת לטובה. הרבה כבר ראיתי והרבה עוד אראה, אך מה שנגלה לעיניי שם לא אוכל לשוב ולראות. כל המילים שנבראו ושיבררו בכל השפות כולן לא יצליחו לתאר ולו מעט ממה שנגלה לעיניי. ואף זאת אדע לא אוכל לשכוח, לא יהיה בי הכוח להבין.
The second English reading can be found on page 31, verses 8 to 19, and will be read by Debbie Sternfeld-Lipkin. Born in Winnipeg, Debbie attended the I.L. Peretz Folk School, Jefferson Junior High, and Garden City Collegiate. Debbie attended the University of Manitoba Faculty of Arts and then graduated from nursing, later specializing in the hemodialysis unit at HSC. The mother of 2 daughters, she became very involved in their school activities and became the president of the Ramah Home and School Association. Debbie also did fundraising for National Council of Jewish Women, Zedek Sisterhood, and the Combined Jewish Appeal. Following Steven Spielberg's award-winning movie Schindler's List and the creation of the Shoah Foundation, Debbie became an interviewer of the Winnipeg Holocaust survivors, documenting the history of their experiences before, during, and after the Holocaust in both English and Yiddish. Debbie's work is inspired by her late parents, Mendel Sternfeld and Rachel Gozer Sternfeld Goldstein, of blessed memory, who survived the Holocaust. Her mother taught at Ramah Hebrew School and cherished the opportunity to teach young Jewish students their first Hebrew prayers. Along with her beloved husband, Jack, Debbie tirelessly volunteers her time to the Jewish community and provides support to survivors of the Holocaust.
What befell the people Israel in Nazi Europe, however, is beyond classification, and what confronted its sons and daughters defies description. Untold numbers were forced out of their homes, torn from their families, trampled in the dust, worked to death. 6 million created in the divine image were strangled, cremated, shot, buried alive. They died of starvation, of thirst, and of the cold. This time the monster stretched open its mouth beyond bounds, with a blood-curdling shriek and with stinking breath, and sought to eradicate everything. Without mercy, it set out to destroy, to slaughter, and to lay waste the entire people from those nearing the end of their days to embryos in their mother's wombs. Countless trains stuffed with human cargo sped to the camps where the chimney smoke ascended to God, but the heavens were brass and the firmament iron. The click-clack of boxcars' wheels blended with the barking of dogs, and the clank of the iron doors merged with the stomping of hobnailed boots. Like a gigantic thundering orchestra, all of these sounds silenced the thin, small voices bursting out of the hearts of the precious few, the righteous of the world's nations who had been touched by the word of God. May God recall their deeds in their favor. So much have I seen, and so much have I yet to see. But what revealed to me there, I never could see again. All the words in the world, created and yet to be created, in every single language, will never be able to describe even a small part of what was displayed before my eyes. And this too do I know. Never will I be able to forget, and never will I have the power to understand.
Our next reading can be found on page 33, verses 1 to 12. And our reader will be Julian Fredette. Julian is an educator by profession and the Director Emeritus of Pastoral Services for the Archdiocese of St. Boniface. Julian holds a strong commitment to interfaith dialogue and is chair of the board of Bat Kol International Leadership Team, a member of the Christian Jewish Dialogue of Manitoba, and a member of the Ha'emet Chavruta that meets biweekly at St. Ignatius Parish.
From the Journal of a Journey to Another World. I was part of a small delegation of journalists that stole into the ghetto in order to see what was happening behind its walls. I stayed there for 8 hours, during which I aged 10 years. On our way there, we stopped at a church to worship since it was Sunday. When the last notes of the organ had faded, we listened to the words of the priest. He spoke of suffering and affliction, of love and compassion, of pity and kindness, and sent us on our way with the blessing, May God be with you. But when we passed the guardhouses placed in the walls surrounding the ghetto, we were left with the suffering and the affliction, them alone. As we entered, a cart was coming toward us, pushed and pulled by 3 men. Bloated corpses were heaped upon it, their heads bouncing to a rhythm, determined by muddy ruts in the road, as if they were greeting us. Thus, for the first time, we met death's partner, famine. It was impossible not to feel its presence in every corner, and it was the force endlessly propelling streams of weakened people through the streets, their faces filled with despair. Wherever you looked, terrifying sights, a dead body, its face covered by a newspaper, and a man hastily removing its overcoat while digging it in its pockets with anticipation. A young girl holding tightly her infant sister, who was weeping out of hunger listlessly, maybe dying, maybe sleeping. An elder crowned with tefillin, stretching out a feeble hand, his eyes reflecting the peace he had made with the most dreadful of all. A boy who had tried to smuggle potato skins into the ghetto, surrounded by a group of guards, reveling with coarse laughter as they stripped him before he was beaten to death.
Our fourth English reading is found on pages 35 to 37, verses 13 to 25, and will be read by Joanne Seif. Holding graduate degrees in religious studies and education, Joanne Seif has worked as a freelance writer for over 20 years and is the author of 3 books. Her Jewish identity inspires her to make positive change through writing, editing, and teaching. Her articles on literacy, housing, health, and food security have appeared in the Winnipeg Free Press, The Forward, The Jewish Independent, and CBC. In 2024, she was awarded a Rockower Award for Excellence in Writing about Jewish Thought and Life from the American Jewish Press Association.
A group of young people was assembled around a bulletin board. One of the announcements, written in Yiddish, drew my attention. It was explained to us that this was an announcement about a concert to be held that very day, a small choir and a violinist. Other announcements told about Torah instruction and lectures on current events. Did these have the power, even if momentary, to silence gnawing hunger or to stifle the dread of what the future held? Whence did this nation draw the strength to stare into the eyes of the destroying angel? We also met with members of the Judenrat, community leaders, these unfortunates, into whose hands were entrusted the lives of their brothers and sisters without the power to save them. Once again, they were forced to organize people for a transport while the motors of the trucks already were roaring in the central square. With shoving and shouting, mothers and their children were forced, along with the elderly holding their canes, the ailing and the crippled and the feeble, into the cavernous maws of the trucks, and all their eyes were filled with nightmarish terror. On their way to the nearby train depot, the trucks left behind them a silent scream, shrouded in black smoke, and the painful certain knowledge that tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, this scene would be repeated until the ghetto's last breath. The return to the city's main street, with its traffic and tumult, crowds and carousing, brought me at once from one world to another. A narrow wall and a few gates separated worlds that were so different. What do dwellers of one world know about their neighbors in the other one? And if I were to tell, would they listen? And if they were to listen, could they believe? And if they were to believe, would they not attempt to explain or to cleanse their consciences with scores of different and differing rationalizations? And if they were to ask me why all of this befell the Jews, how would I answer?
Melissa Magarel will now perform the beautiful song, Eli, Eli, my God, my God. The lyrics were written by Hannah Senesh, who was a very courageous young woman who was captured by the Nazis in Hungary, tortured without revealing any secrets, and murdered. Thank you, Melissa. That was beautiful. And we begin chapter 3, page 39, verses 1 to 10, and our reader will be Angeliki Bugiachi. Angeliki is Acting Manager, Public Programs at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. She's passionate about curating visitor experiences that foster meaningful dialogue and inspire action for advancing human rights. With a diverse professional background, Angeliki has contributed to the cultural sector in Canada and abroad, and it has been my pleasure to work with her on several programs for International Holocaust Remembrance Day.
Written upon a scrap of paper found between two wooden beds. Gertrude is my name. There were many Gertrudes in our town, but in these long, cold barracks, there is no Gertrude but me. There is an Anushka here who comes from the Ukraine, and Gittel from Poland, Helen from Germany, and Grazia from Greece, and a continuing long list of those who once were women. What cruel callous magnet drew us here from all corners of the continent and cast all of us into one mold? Wooden shoes and a dress of coarse fabric, a blanket to cover our body in a cold that knows no mercy, and a tin plate and a spoon that never could hold enough to satisfy the incessant, gnawing hunger. The past is becoming blurred, replaced only by the present, today, right now, this moment, the sewing machine, a portion of foul soup, the lineup where some of us collapse and from which others are plucked away to disappear, accompanied by shrieks and dogs, and no one knows where. The present fills all of our existence. About the future, no one speaks, and with difficulty, I remember the past.
Verses 11 to 20 can be found on pages 39 to 41, and our reader will be Terry Brown. Terry is the co-founder and CEO of Okema Community and HR Solutions. He is committed to supporting Indigenous communities in reclaiming governance and economic independence. A proud Peguis First Nation citizen, Terry believes in the power of small actions to create lasting change, inspired by the fable of the hummingbird. Terry is honored to take part in this commemoration, recognizing the importance of remembrance, resilience, and shared history.
Oh, how short-sighted and innocent we were. We rejected the advice to abandon the homeland, to emigrate to the distant east, and we hid ourselves from the signs, no Jews allowed. Our ears were sealed from hearing the hateful speeches. For were they just words? Or what can words really accomplish? With all our might, we wanted to believe that only if we would humble ourselves a short while, the storm would pass and be no more. Even after the night of the burning synagogues, when the streets were covered with shattered glass, we continued hoping for the best, since nothing worse could come to pass. And after all, everyone was cultured here. Alas, for the blind fools who did not know what the future held. It was on a Friday night. We were sitting in the salon, and my crippled, wheelchair-bound father, Manfred, was singing along with the choir, being broadcast on the radio. Suddenly, the door was broken down and they entered. Black uniforms and shining boots. They shoved Father into an adjoining room, and they commanded us to pack the suitcase within 10 minutes. Where you are going is safe and sheltered, they said. Hurry, hurry.
The seventh English reading is found on pages 41 to 43, verses 21 to 29, and will be read for us tonight by J.D. Devgan, who is the MLA for McPhillips. And he is also the legislative assistant to the Minister of Finance. He previously served as Vice President of the Sikh Society of Manitoba and was the Director of Government Relations at the University of Manitoba prior to his election.
Later, only interrupted images and fragmented sounds. An isolated rifle shot, the vacant stares of the neighbors, the frozen city square, a mother's farewell cry, the filthy truck, the boxcar with not a breath of fresh air, the long barracks with nothing but wooden beds, and the sour-faced capo. Our hair they shaved when they brought us into the barracks, and in place of the six-pointed yellow star, they burned a blue number into our arms. And from that moment, only sewing and sewing, from the morning to night, without rest, day after day, hats, coats, shirts, and trousers appropriate for the shining boots. At first, I still asked, why? Why me? Why us? Why now? But I stopped asking. The question is more painful when there is no answer. Tonight, they will take all of us to another location. This is what the capo told us, and she did not add another word, but her face was gloomy. I am writing all of this on scraps of paper, and if a human being should ever find them, perhaps he will have the strength to ask for a reason why there was no.
We move on to chapter 4, and our 8th English reading is found on pages 45 to 47, verses 1 to 21, and will be read for us by the Reverend Donald James of Bridges for Peace. Currently, he is the interim national director and joined the staff of Bridges for Peace Canada in December 2013, following 7 years as a volunteer. He studied at McMaster Divinity College and pastored Baptist churches for 12 years. Building relationships with the Jewish community in Winnipeg, Canada, and Israel, Donald considers the opportunities to build relationships with the Jewish communities in Winnipeg, Canada, and Israel as an immense privilege afforded to him by being on the Bridges leadership team.
Confronting the Abyss, the last words of Yaakov David ben Yoel Tzvi Halevi. 4 times was I born, and once already have I died. My first birth was accompanied by the joyful voices of my parents and my 8 brothers and sisters when I came into the world with the help of God, may he be blessed, 25 years ago. I was born 3 other times over the past 10 years, during which time I also died once. After that death, no death could ever frighten me. The second time I was born on the night of the selection, when they gathered us, all the males in town, to the central square. The stars had disappeared and only the yellow patches flickered in the darkness. We were told to form a long line and strip to the waist. One by one, we passed by the light of a dim oil lamp near a devil dressed in black, who with the wave of a hand directed to the left or to the right. At once I realized that the strong and the sturdy were being sent to one side, and the young and the aged to the other. Hastily, I filled my shoes with dirt to gain a few centimeters in height. Swelling my chest, I even walked on my toes as I passed by him. I was sent with the sturdy. Later, we heard the shots, and I knew that my life had been given to me as a gift. Blessed be his name. The third time I was born, when 1,000 of us were taken to walk in front of soldiers on a battlefield. The area was full of mines, and we formed a living wall before the troops. Each and every day, our number diminished as comrades ripped apart were left behind as food for the birds of the heavens and the beasts of the field. 78 of us survived the march. I felt that our lives began anew when we finally reached the barn where we were favored with our daily portion of thin soup. Blessed be the Lord each day. The fourth time I was born later that night. I had left the barn for the yard behind it, where I managed to catch sight of a spark from a match and the sickening smile of the one who had lit it. Since the living wall had fulfilled its mission, it was no longer needed. The barn went up in flames, and all my comrades soared heavenward on a flaming pyre, a sacrificial offering ascending to God. May he be blessed.
Our next reading can be found on pages 47 to 49, verses 22 to 33, and will be read by Orissia Petrushin. Orissia is a teacher and head advisor for the social justice and chess clubs at École Secondaire Sisler High School. In 2019, she was the recipient of the Prime Minister's Award for Teaching Excellence and also received the Queen Elizabeth II Platinum Jubilee Medal in 2022. Throughout her career as an educator, Orissia has committed to the importance of Holocaust education. And in 2024, Orissia students were the only group in Canada to participate in the My Hometown project launched by Collingwood Learning and the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. This project invited students to examine their communities, to find connections to the Holocaust, and research the effects it had on survivors and the world.
Whoever has been born 4 times will not die only once. My death came to me after I had fled from the site of the fire. I was captured by locals and forced into a boxcar on its way to the place where work makes one free. An orchestra greeted us, and all of us were led, holding soap and towel, to wash our sweat-covered bodies. The smell of flesh on fire confused our senses. The soap seemed to be burning in our hands, and the orchestra was playing. Thanks to God's mercies for me, I was removed from the line at the last moment and did not become part of the naked mass shot into the room so savagely. The door slammed with a deafening noise, and from the room burst forth sounds that no words can adequately describe. The howling hiss on gas, streaming in, accompanied by a mine-light of faint and feeble cries, Shema Israel, and Mamalech, the Lord our God, and Madre Mia, the Lord is one, and Tatalech, followed by a low murmuring sound. Here my mask began, to remove the bodies, to pull out gold teeth, to show the dead into the oven. When I pulled out the teeth of my brother Lazar, whom I had not seen for years, my heart died with me. My body continued to live, but I became one of the walking dead. The Lord gave me life, and the Lord took it away. May the name of the Lord be blessed. How the Master of the universe has taken such trouble to ensure that we would lose our faith in him. Yet, in spite of his wrath and his rage, we have refused to succumb. When I die again, tear not your garments, mourn not, for there is no death after death. Do not even attempt to ask why. What I have not accomplished for myself, let others not try to accomplish on my behalf.
And now we'll hear from Cantor Leslie Emery, who will sing Kinderjahren, Childhood Years. And this beautiful song was composed by Mordechai Gebirtig, the composer of the ghetto.
befar die Augen. Wo ich bin geboren, aufgezogen, euch mein Wiegel seh ich dort, steht noch auf dem Zettel, wie Achulem ist das Herz verflogen. Oh, mein Mame, ach, wie ich pfleg sie lieben. Gott, sie hat in Checker mich getrieben. Jeder Knie ist von ihr Hand, mir noch so gut bekannt. Gott, kein Zeichen ist mir nicht verblieben. Noch seh ich dich fegele, du Schöne. Noch kusch ich dir heute beklecht deine Augen voll mit Tränen dringen in mein Herz rein. Hab gemeint, du wirst einmal sein meine. Kinderjahren, junge, schöne Blumen. Zurück zu mir wird ihr schon mehr nicht kommen. Jahrenalte, treilige, kalte Mäure, schrotige, haben euer schönen Platz vernommen. Kinderjahren, Chobach angeboren. Mein getreue Mama, euch verloren. Finderstub nicht doch kein Fleck, Fegele ist euch weg. Oi, wie schnell bin ich schon alt geworden.
Thank you, Cantor Leslie. And next, we will have a Hebrew reading, verses 1 to 17 on pages 50 to 52, which will be read by Bonnie Cham, who is a former president of Shaarey Zedek Synagogue.
בת קול משמיים מרחפת ואומרת עלי לעני ובוכייה על הוריה של גרטרוד שנקראו זה מזה בפירוט עלי לעני ובוכייה Al Gertrude, ve Anushka, ve Gitel, ve Helena Ugrazia, shekala kochan b'machanot ha'avoda, alehi le'ani vochia. Al anshe hayud nerat, ve'al hakapo hayehudia, shenidrashu lemalei tafkid, she'ein adam yachol lemalo, alehi le'ani vochia. Al Yaakov David ben Yoel Tzvi Halevi Shemet Pa'amayim Venolad Arba Alehi Le'ani Vochia Al Teshameyot Esrimu Shnayim V'Chaverav She'alu Hashamayim Abistot Hamokshim על אלה אני בוכייה. על 77 הניצולים, שעפרם צבור במטבעין, על אלה אני בוכייה. על אליעזר שאף במזווים שבחלומותיו לא ראת את אחיו עוקר את שיני הזהב מגופתו. על אלה אני בוכייה. על אלה אני בוכייה, ועל המיליונים הדוקים בגטאות ובמחנות המעבר, על המשוטטים ביערות, ועל המסתרים במרתפים ובכוכים. על מי שמצא מקלט בחיק דת אחרת, או איבד את אלוהיו. על מי שניתן לניסויים בידי חיות טרף, ששם רופא ומדען נקרא עליהן. על מי שמת ברעב ובצמא, נחנק למוות ברכבת מישה, או בתאי הגזים. נורא נקבר חי, או נשרף. על מי שחוצה להורג בתלייה, למען יראו ויראו. על מקדשי שם שמיים בשם ישראל, שסרבו להיכנע ונלחמו עד מוות. על מי שאיבד את ביתו וכבודו ותקוותו. על מי שנותר בחיים לחיות את הזוועה מחדש, יום יום ורגע רגע. על אלה אני בוכייה. על הללים שלא למדו להגות אימה, על ילדים וילדות שנראיהם נגזלו מהם והם קמלו טרם פריחה. על עולמים ועל עמות שלא נתברכו מתחת לחופה. על זקנים שלא זכו לשבע של חסד, על התזמורות ועל המוזיקה ועל כל יפי העולם, שאהבת לו צבעוניותו וכולו רק חום ואפור ושחור. על כל אלה אני בוכייה.
Our next English reading can be found on page 51, verses 1 to 8, and will be read for us tonight by Harlan Abels of the Jewish Heritage Center of Western Canada. Harlan is a 28-year-old CPA who has worked as an accountant for almost 5 years. It is this interest in the profession combined with previous involvement in various Jewish groups growing up, such as BBYO, Hillel, and Genesis, that guided Harlan to the Jewish Heritage Center of Western Canada. And here, Harlan serves as both president and treasurer and is grateful to have been part of such an important organization for more than 4 years, as we are grateful to have you.
A heavenly voice cries out, "For these do I weep." For Gertrude's parents who were torn away from each other, for these do I weep. For Gertrude and Anushka, Gitel, Helen, and Grazia, whose vitality came to an end in labor camps, for these do I weep. For members of the Judenrat and for the Jewish capo who were asked to fulfill a task that no human being could fulfill, for these do I weep. For Yaakov David ben Yoel Tzvi Halevi, who died twice and was born 4 times, for these do I weep. For 922 comrades who from minefields ascended the heavens, for these do I weep. For the 77 who were saved, whose dust was gathered in the barn, for these do I weep. For Lazar, who in his most terrifying nightmares never saw his brother pulling gold teeth from his corpse, for these do I weep.
Verses 9 to 22 can be found on pages 51 to 53 and will be read for us by Mohammad Rezai. Mohammad Rezai was born in northwest Iran to a family of 5 in a region called Baluv, meaning land above water. At 20, he fled to Turkey, becoming a refugee for 2 years before arriving in Canada as a landed immigrant in October of 1988. Mohammad enrolled in English classes at Isaac Newton School, later completing his grade 12 equivalency at Winnipeg Adult Education Center. He earned a science degree in 1995 and pursued an after-degree education program at the University of Winnipeg and the University of Manitoba. He began teaching in a rural town in southwestern Manitoba before joining the staff at Gordon Bell High School. In 2010, he embarked on his vice principal journey, serving in 2 communities before being appointed principal at Isaac Newton. In 2013, Mohammad completed his master's degree in education in areas of place-based education in science and mathematics through an Indigenous lens. In 2023, he was appointed and currently serves as Assistant Superintendent of Anti-Racism, Equity, and Climate Justice in the Winnipeg School Division.
For these do I weep, for the millions crowded in the ghettos and detention camps, for those wandering in forests and those hidden in attics and underground bunkers, for those who found refuge in the bosom of another faith or who lost their God, for those who were given over to experiments at the hands of wild beasts called doctors and scientists, for those who died of hunger and of thirst, smothered to death in freight trains or in gas chambers, shot, buried alive, or cremated, for those who were brought out to be killed by hanging so that they would be seen, and for those who sanctified God's name and the name of the people Israel, refusing to be subdued, fighting to the death, for those who lost their homes, their dignity, and their hope, and for those left alive to live the horror anew day after day, moment after moment. For those I weep, for infants who never learned to say mommy, for boys and girls whose youth was stolen from them, who withered before coming to blossom, for young men and women who never were blessed beneath the wedding canopy, for the elderly denied the privilege of gracious old age, for the orchestra and for the music, and for all the world's beauty whose rainbow of colors was lost, replaced by only brown and gray and black. For all those do I weep. I struggle through so hard before the veiled curtain, before the merciful and gracious one, of great kindness and truth, how I pled and how I begged, how I wanted to understand, was all of this known on high. Was this the decree of God who is filled with compassion? This was the reward of such a nation. But there was no sound and no response, only an exasperating silence. The Most High abides in secret. God dwells in the shadow of silence. Deep, hidden, and awesome are the events. No one understands them, not even echoes of the heavenly voice.
And now we'll hear again from Cantor Leslie Emery, who will sing Zognit Kein Mol, also known as the Partisan Song, written by Hirsch Glick.
Sag niet keinmal als du gehst dem letzten Weg. Gott stimmt im Bleien verstellen blaue Tag. Kommen wird noch unser ausgebänkte Schau. Das Wetter beugt und unser Tod mir seinen da. Kommen wird noch unser ausgebänkte Schau. Das Wetter beugt und unser Tod mir seinen da. Von grünem Palmenland bis weiten Land von Schnee. Wir kommen an mit unser Pein, mit unser Weh. Und wo gefallen sie, so spritzt von unser Blut. Sprotzen wir dort unser Gewurre, unser Mut. Und wo gefallen sie, so spritzt von unser Blut. Sprotzen wir dort unser Gewurre, unser Mut. Es wird die Morgens am Begelden uns dem Heim. Und die Nächten wird verschwiegen mit dem Feind. Nur und verdammen wird gesungen in der Kajor. Wie ein Parole so gehen das Lied von dort zu dort. Nur und versammeln wird die Sonne in der Kajor. Wie ein Parole so gehen das Lied von dort zu dort. Das Lied geschrieben ist mit Blut und nicht mit Leid. Es ist nicht kein Lied für die Vögel auf der Frei. Das hat der Punkt zwischen fallen die gewinnt. Das Lied gesungen mit ner Ganes in die Hand. Das hat der Fuchs zwischen fallen dicke Wind. Das Lied gesungen mit ner Ganes in die Hand. Sag nicht keinmal, als du gehst dem letzten Weg. Hosch in den Bleien verstellen neue Tag. Kommen werden noch unser ausgebänkte Schau. Es wird erbeugt und unser Trug mir seinen Sohn. Kommen werden noch unser ausgebänkte Schau. Es wird erbeugt und unser Trug mir seinen Sohn.
And now we arrive at chapter 6. On page 55, verses 1 to 11 will be read by Jeff Lieberman. Jeff began his position as CEO of the Jewish Federation of Winnipeg in August 2023. Prior to assuming this role, he owned a promotional products company for many years. He has volunteered for several organizations, His roles including Chair of the Board of Governors at the University of Manitoba, President of the University of Manitoba Alumni Association, President of the Rady JCC, President of Folklorama, Chair of the Israel Pavilion for Folklorama, Chair of B'nai B'rith's Holocaust Remembrance Program, and Board Director of the Winnipeg Blues Hockey Club. Jeff is married to Robin, and his children are Amy, who's married to Gabriel, Joshua, who's with Emily, Noah, and his faithful dog, Murphy.
Let there be light again. Again did the chronicler speak. At the edges of the night, the first rays of dawn could be discerned. They shone upon the remnants of human beings in striped clothing who stared at their surroundings with dead eyes. They have forgotten how to be happy, and their bodies reject any food offered them. Bulldozers thrust into gigantic pits thousands of thin, naked corpses that fall, one atop the other, their limbs withered. In camps of the uprooted circled human streams, searching in despair for members of their families, and they were afraid to hope lest their hope be lost. The unfortunates who tried to return to their homes found them in hostile neighbors from time to time, and more than once, they were saved only by a miracle from murder following murder. People who did not know or who had sought not to know, who refused to believe or who forbade believing, stood with tearful eyes, not knowing where to direct their gaze or how to cleanse their conscience. Slowly, slowly, people returned to their homes, and family members were reunited. People married again, and children were born. Wave upon wave poured into the east, and the state of Israel arose, and centers of Jewish life flourished throughout the world.
Our final reading can be found on pages 55 to 57, verses 12 to 18, and will be read for us by Anita Wartzman. Anita is the president of the Asper Foundation. She previously chaired the Gray Academy Board of Jewish Education, was a president of the Jewish Foundation of Manitoba, and co-chaired the Lion of Judah campaign at the Jewish Federation of Winnipeg. Currently, Anita sits on the Rainbow Coalition Subcommittee and Allocations Committee for the Jewish Federation of Winnipeg, on the board of the University of Manitoba Associates, and is on the board of the Business Council of Manitoba. She also chairs the Social Wellness Committee for the Business Council of Manitoba.
Trains traveled to resorts once again, and orchestras were making joyous music in all corners of the land. Perhaps this is the way in which heaven sought some consolation for those who suffered and mourned. The heroism of courageous resistors was revealed and proclaimed. Mourners' Kaddish was recited for the dead. Memorial books were written. Monuments were erected so that finally mourners could find a place where they could weep for their dead. Criminals were punished, and those who were afflicted in body or soul received help. Nevertheless, it was impossible to restrain the angels of dreams who continues to terrify the rescued night after night, impossible to silence the gnawing voice of conscience, which demands an explanation for satanic evil and for apathetic hearts. Such questions, why God, why? Why us? Why them? Why now? Why in that way are left suspended in midair, hovering over all human deeds, and there is no response. Time will tell what we have learned. Only time will reveal whether we truly have listened to the voice of the blood of the slaughtered crying out from the earth. Do not mourn too much, but do not sink into the forgetfulness of apathy. Do not allow days of darkness to return. Weep, but wipe the tears away. Do not absolve and do not exonerate. Do not attempt to understand. Live to learn without an answer. Through our blood, live.
And Cantor Leslie Emery will now sing Belz, mein Städtele Belz.
Each year, I'm tasked to select music to represent one of the most difficult times and places to reflect on as a human being. And every year I select a new piece, and this is my new piece for this year, Belz. It's new to me. But its message to me is a reminder not only of the brutality in which 6 million Jewish people were murdered and so many others, but of the world that they lived in before and that they emerged longing for, that Jewish people all the way over here were longing to return to, the shtetl life. And so I hope you can feel that a little bit as they play and as I sing.
Erzähl mir, Alter, erzähl mir geschwind, weil ich will wissen, alles erzählen. Dieser teuerste Stiebel, was hat am Morgen Glanz, zu blüht noch das Bäumle, was ich hab verpflanzt. Der Stiebel ist hart, verwachsen mit Mochengrün. Der alte Pfad, der Fenster ohne Glas, der Garnik ist krumm, zu beugen die Welt. Du wirst das schon gar nicht erkennen. Der Garnik ist krumm, zu beugen die Welt. Du wirst das schon gar nicht erkennen. Belz, mein Städtele Belz, mein Heimele, wo ich hab meine kindersche Jahren verbracht. Oi, 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 Belz, mein Städtele Belz, in armen Stiebeln mit alle Kinder noch dort gelacht. Jeden Schabes pfleg ich laufen dort near der Trine gleich, zu sitzen unter dem grünen Meilen, Meilenteich. Belz, mein Städtele Belz, mein Heimele, wo hab gehad, die schöne Chaloi Mess,
Thank you, Cantor Leslie. And now I'd like to invite Rabbi Mas to close the program for us.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Hassan Leslie. Thank you, Carrie and Stephen. Wonderful choir, Janet and Melissa. Thank you so much for all your contributions. And now it's time to continue with the specific liturgy to remember the souls of the 6 million. So the tradition is to wrap up the service reciting a special prayer. It's called El Maler Rachamim, God full of mercy. And it's a special prayer where we are asking God to not just receive, but protect and elevate the souls of the dead. For that, we are going to be holding a very special scroll, which we call it the Shoah scroll, the Holocaust scroll. And Cousin Leslie is going to explain a little bit of the context on what this scroll is and how it found its way to the congregation Shaarey Zedek.
Well, miraculously, over the course of the Shoah, I guess there were many little miracles that emerged afterwards, the lives that were saved. But the communities of Moravia and Bohemia, which is now in the Czech Republic, they were very wise because they came up with this plan to save their religious artifacts from the Nazis. Many Sifrei Torah, scrolls of Torah, were burned during the Holocaust, and to Jewish people, that's unimaginable, unimaginable. The Czech communities had told the Nazis that the most precious thing to the Jewish people were their religious artifacts, so the Nazis wanted to collect them. And 1,500 scrolls were sent to the Prague Museum and saved. After the war, they were redistributed all around the world. And this scroll behind me found its way to Winnipeg. The Jewish people who were tasked with doing this work for the Nazis in the Prague Museum were meticulous in cataloging where each scroll was from, and you can actually trace the history of each scroll. This scroll is from a community called Slaný, which was in Bohemia. In 1880, it was scribed, and there was a synagogue there that had been opened at about 1860, the first synagogue in the community. There were about 207 Jewish residents, according to the census in 1880 at the time. At the time of the Shoah, well, there wasn't a lot of hope. They were very close to Germany with where they were located in one of the hardest communities hit earlier in the war. And there were 2 survivors I could find on the Yad Vashem database. But when I see this Sefer Torah, it really struck me because inside of it is a scribing tradition that I've never seen before. And I read Torah a lot, and I study these things. And I discovered, there's this whole branch of scribing and sacred knowledge that had been lost. And I say that because I think it's hard to fathom all that was lost. Jewish people had lived in that area for 1,000 years, 1,000 years of sacred traditions, melodies, families, growth, gone. And so a part of my work here is remembering. So I study it, and I talked about it to all of you. And it comes out for all of our memorial services when we honor those who lost their lives in the Shoah. And so we're going to hold it today. I'd like to invite our president of our congregation, Fanny Levy, to hold the Sefer Torah, and you're invited to rise.
We're on page 62. We have the El Mal Rachamim prayer. Cousin Leslie is going to sing it in Hebrew. The translation is going to be projected into the screen.
El Mal Rachamim Shochen Mamromim Hametzeh Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei HaShekhinah B'malot Kedoshim Utehorim Kezohar Harakia Mazhirim Et Nishmot Kol Acheinu B'nei Yisrael Shenetbechu b'Shoah Anashim, Nashim v'Tav Shenachneku V'shenizrafu V'shenehergu שמסרו את נפשם על קידוש השם. וגן עדן תהא מנוחתם. אנא בעל הרחמים, אסירם בסתר כנפיך לעולמים. וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמותיהם. אדוני הוא נחלתם, וינוחו בשלום על משכבותיהם. ונאמר Amen.
Amen. Please join me now. Page 62, we have the Mourner's Kaddish. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ועלמא דיברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, וחי יכון וביומכון וחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהא שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא. ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, תמירם בעלמא ואמרו אמן. יהא שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. You may be seated. Well, thank you so much, everyone, distinguished guests, everyone who came out this evening to remember and to commit yourself with a world of peace, a world of justice, a world of understanding. And also thank you so much, everyone at home, for tuning in. It's great that you find a way also to be with us. And I would like to thank all the people who were involved into the service itself or the preparation of this event. So I would like to start with the Jewish Heritage Center of Western Canada and, of course, Bel Janiewski, all the candle lighters, and also all the readers of Megillat HaShoah. Special thanks to Marvin Polanski, our audiovisual director, for all the video, the streaming, and the recording. Thank you to Colin Hansen, doing front of the house audio. Thank you to Ryan Grosny and Leo Marcus, who were in charge of all the subtitles that we enjoyed this evening. Thank you so much, young people, that they found a way of participating in this meaningful event. Thank you to Bill Weisman. Thank you to Ronen Mas, Mal Magorel, the Ruach Choir, Stephen Cox on piano, Janet Pelletier-Getz, also on piano, Carolina Nagy, violin, Phyllis Leibman, Sandy Polanski, and Kirsten Hansen, our ushers this evening. Thank you to Fanny Levy, President of Congregation Shaarey Zedek, Robin Shapiro, our photographer, and also thank you to Tali Milo, Robert Didich, and Cantor Leslie, of course, for all your wonderful contributions for this event. And thank you again, everyone, for coming out. So before we go home, I would like to invite everyone to rise as we finish the last page of the book with a tikva. We invite the Ruach Choir to come to the bima to sing for us. everyone. God bless you. Good night.